Yes, so the collaboration with XLR was an excellent one. We conducted a Power BI workshop with Advanced Excel over a span of 3 days. The workshop was almost 12 hours long in total. Mr. Karthik, who was an amazing trainer, helped the students understand the concepts deeply. I am sure that the students will be able to apply these concepts in their careers as well as their daily lives.
The trainer, Mr. Karthik, was an excellent person where he explained in very detailed manner on how to give great insights using very complex data sets.
So it was a machine learning workshop. We learned a lot from the course and it was a great experience attending the workshop.
The trainer was very helpful. He had a hands-on approach with his teaching and it was fabulous.
This was a great experience for me. So I would absolutely love it if XLR and its team would come again to our campus and conduct more events like this.
It was a great course and it started from basics and took me to a great extent.
The experience of the workshop was really nice. The feedback from all the students was positive. They understood the concept. The workshop was also practical based with some questions. The experience with XLR was very smooth. They helped us in conducting the workshop smoothly right from the and deciding the course till the distribution of certificates. In overall, this workshop was a success during our technical fest Atmos, and I thank XLR for being a part of it.
very much interested in learning digital marketing course for a very long period of time, but I don't get a proper platform. So later from our college, I get to know about XLR and I enroll in XLR course. It was really good experience. Our course has been taken by Mayur sir, and he was very good teacher. He not only focusing on theory part, he's doing how
Good morning, everyone. So, yesterday we tried to look at DNS services. Today, let's try to understand on database, okay, concept. Let me quickly share my screen. Just a minute. So, we'll try to understand what is a database, okay? So, even the cloud is trying to provide us database services, which we can try to link it with the production servers and trying to store the data in a structured and unstructured format, okay? So by definition, if we try to look, a database is an organized collection of data so that it can be easily accessed and managed, right? So that means we are trying to store the data in a structured format or in unstructured format. We can try to organize it properly so that we can try to access it and manage it as well, where we can try to edit, modify it based on the requirement. So as we are trying to tell organized collection of a data based on the use of database management system. So what is database management system? That is nothing but a software that interacts with end users or the applications. Okay. And the database stored inside it, which we are trying to analyze and capture so that we can try to configure, store, and modify it. Basically, we can try to organize the data into tables, rows, columns, and indexes to make it easier to find the relevant information. Okay. So how the database, the data inside the database can be viewed? We can try to organize the data into a tables, rows, and columns. Okay. So which will be helpful for us to easily manage them. All right. So if you try to look at sample, to show you how this looks out. It will be in the form of a tabular form, like a rows, columns that will be trying to visible. Okay. So if you try to use a look at interface, I'll try to show you. So this is how the interface of the database that has been stored will look like. You can see. So it is kind of a tabular form. For example, customer ID or employee ID, the store ID, the first name, the last name, the email ID, the address, and if it's active or not, creation date, last update. So it is kind of a rows with an IDs and the columns and the indexes. So basically we will try to find and retrieve the required information with the help of some specific queries. That is nothing but an SQL query language. Okay. With the help of SQL query language, we will try to retrieve the data. Okay, you can see this is the information how I'm trying to pull this. For example, a customer ID, the first name, the last name, the phone numbers, and the country information. So it is kind of a sheet where the database management software, which is trying to store this data, there can be a huge set of data that we can try to retrieve and manage organized properly. So basically, this retrieved configuration can be done with the help of SQL query language. Okay. SQL is nothing but a structured query language, which will be helpful for us to pull and trying to manage the database. You can see we can have a tables, and this is a SQL query language. Whenever we want to type this query, it will try to show you the required information. For example, I have a data, for example, employee data. Okay. If I'm trying to type select star, that means I want to drive the data from this employee table, and then it is trying to write the query of department data and department ID. So it will try to give me the information. It is trying to give me the information in the tabular form. So basically, we are trying to do it to organize the data. Okay. So that which will try to make it easier to find the relevant information. All right. So we are trying to have these databases in a different forms. Small databases can be stored on a file system. Okay. Where large databases are stored on a cloud storage or a big level physical storage, whatever. Okay. So the design of databases spans formal techniques and practical consideration. There are different ways and algorithms that has been done, like a data modeling, query language, security, privacy of a sensitive data, and distributed computing issues, including supporting concurrent access and tolerance. All right. So there are different types of databases in general. There are different types of databases which will be useful, and it depends on what kind of a data you want to store inside the database. Okay, what kind of data you want to store inside the database, depending on that, the data will be stored. So basically, as we have seen, the data is nothing but a collection of distinct small unit of information. So it can be used in a variety of forms. Like what kind of a data you can store, like a text information, numbers, the media, the documentation, the the bytes. It can be stored in a pieces of paper or electronic memory, etc. Correct? Like a physical storage we are trying to talk about. So in computing, data is information that can be translated into a form of efficient movement and processing. All right. So if you want to store the data, that is fine. But if you want to manage and retrieve the data and organize the data, that is a task. We have a collection of a data that is very huge, right? That is, kind of a very huge data. So if you want to store, but if you want to see and modify the data, that is a big task. For that, there are some kind of softwares, methods that has been implemented. With the help of a database software management system, we can try to organize collection of a data so that we can easily manage. Okay. So there are many dynamic websites on the world, World Wide Web, which are handled through the databases. Okay. For example, if you want to check the rooms of a hotel, okay, if there is a model that checks the availability of rooms in a hotel, it is an example of a dynamic website that uses a database. So what actually happens if you open some hotel booking website, if you want to book a hotel, then if you want to put some date and trying to find the number of rooms available or not, then it will try to show you at this particular date there are two hotels and 5 rooms available at this particular date at this location. Correct? So how this information being retrieved? There is a backend database. Correct? There is a backend database which is trying to give us information on the front end. Okay. So we have two different types: relational database and non-relational database. Relational database, we have Microsoft SQL, Oracle database, MySQL. Non-relational we are calling as MongoDB, Cassandra, and Redis. These are non-relational database. Okay. So, for example, if you look at the relational database, we will try to use a software called SQL. SQL or structured query language, which is used to operate on the data stored in a database SQL. All right. So we will try to write some queries and retrieve the data in the front end. Okay. So non-relational database means we can try to store the unstructured data, which doesn't require any complex SQL queries or any tables. It will be trying to store the unstructured data, which doesn't have any schema restrictions, where you can try to easily configure and trying to see the data inside the front end. Okay, like a key value management system, the NoSQL. We are calling this as a NoSQL system. So NoSQL system means it is an SQL database. Non-relational means NoSQL. NoSQL database is an approach to design such databases that can accommodate a variety of data models. Okay. So in which data is placed in the tables and the data schema is perfectly designed before the database is built. So this will be used for like a non-dynamic web applications. For example, if you want to store the unstructured data which doesn't need to properly organized, so during that situations, this non-relational database will be useful. Okay. So NoSQL database can handle the extensive amount of data because of its scalability. If the data that has been imported into NoSQL that is trying to go, if the data grows, NoSQL database scale it to automatically to handle the data in an efficient way so that your data is properly stored. So these are the different types of databases which are actually available in the cloud. Okay. So what are the main considerations for a data to be, have it integrated? We need to understand on scalability factor. That means if you are trying to store the data, then there is the future if the data is being, completely increased. At that time, we need a big storage, right? That means we need a storage and the platform. So it has to scalable, scale in. Scale in means scalable. So that's why we have to consider the scalability as a main requirement. That means it has to automatically increase the storage whenever it is required. Okay, it has to automatically increase the storage whenever it is required. And the total storage requirements. When you want to store the database, we need to understand how much storage does this requires. Okay, we need to understand on storage concept. And also the consideration, one of the consideration is object size and type. So this is again important. What kind of an object you want to store? For example, you want to store the structured data, we can try to use a relational database. If you want to store the unstructured data, we can use a non-relational database. Okay. So in this way, we can try to decide what kind of a data you are trying to store. So this is one of the main considerations. And the durability. So your data has to be safe. Okay. Your database has to be safe. You need to understand how durable your data is, and you need to choose the right platform to store and install this database configuration. Okay. So if you see, look at this. A user, for example, he is trying to access some application, for example, Amazon.com or something, correct? A user who is trying to access some web application, then if you see this, the request is going to the application server, that is, Amazon website. Then you are trying to access that. And the application server, what it does, if you want to open some product, or if you want to go to your account page, then the query will be sent out to the backend database. If you want to see the details of this particular user, for example, you want to pull invoice details, it will show you invoice ID, customer ID, order ID, product ID, status, and the total. If you want to look at some product, the product information will try to give you the product ID, product name, amount, price, description, image, status, and statistics. And if you want to see the customer information will also store in the database, like in the form of a tabular form. You see the customer ID, the first name, last name, address, the postal code, age, gender, email ID. If you want to look at the order details, the order ID, total, product ID, customer ID. So all this information that will be trying to store. And whenever you want to retrieve, click on some option inside that website, it will try to give you a response. When you try to click for request, it will go with a query in the backend database. The database will try to respond and give you the information in the front end. Okay. This is one kind of an example where you can try to see in the same way, whatever the application in current technology, whatever the usage that you're trying to have, everything is linked. Everything is linked with the database only. That's how it is really being helpful. Okay. So let's try to see in the cloud how this database looks like, and we will try to deploy a sample database and link it with a server and see if it is trying to, we can try to have it see the database table like SQL table, and we'll try to understand. Okay. We have a different services that are available. For a relational database, we have a services, and non-relational also we have a services. So database. You can say RDS, it's a managed relational database service. We will try to see if how this can be done. Okay. So when we try to see this information, you can see on the left side, we have a dashboard and the database that we can try to select. Let's try to launch a sample database. So here I'm trying to see there are no instances found. So basically, a cloud is trying to provide a database software. Okay. So cloud is trying to provide a database software that we can try to install from the cloud interface, and you can try to connect this database to any of the server. Either it can be Linux or the Windows, and can start using it. Okay. So we will try to create a sample database from our end, right? I'm trying to create database here. So as I told, we are trying to use a relational database here. There are different types of databases which are available. This interface is trying to show me a different database. Aurora, MySQL, Aurora PostgreSQL, these are Amazon's proprietary softwares. And the MySQL, MariaDB, PostgreSQL, Oracle, Microsoft SQL, and IBM DB2. So this is an IBM proprietary one. See, there are different types of databases which are available. So SQL is the most popular one. So let's try to do a understanding and practical lab session on this MySQL ones. I'm selecting as a MySQL as a database here. And it is trying to show me like a production environment you want to use for a high availability and fast performance, or test environment, which is used for a development testing environment without real production. Free tier means it is trying to test it out. Like free tier means you'll have a trying to for the learning stage, you can try to use for a free tier. Okay. So if you try to use the production and dev and test, it will be a chargeable service. So for practice and understanding purpose, we are using the free tier. Okay. So the database instance identifier. Type a name for your database instance. The name must be unique across all database servers owned by your AWS account in the current AWS region. So I have to give a name, like, for example, I'm trying to give as a demo DB, as we are trying to understand, right? Demo DB. Demo DB means demo database. So we need to set the credentials, means authentication to launch this database and to connect the database. Okay. Okay, next. We will try to give a username as, for example, I'm giving an admin username and I have to give some password so that I can try to set for the authentication. All right, I have given the username and password. Now I am trying to configure the database storage, what I have to launch over the cloud environment. That means I'm trying to select the storage type, like instance type as dbt3.micro. That means it has 2 cores of CPU and 1 GB of RAM. Okay. So I can use this under practice. So I'm trying to use a basic one. Under the storage, I'm using the minimum value required for a storage, database storage server that has to be launched is minimum 20 GB. So I'm selecting 20 GB for storage for this database server that can be connected and launched under the cloud environment. Okay. And auto scaling, that means it can try to scale automatically. Like it provides the dynamic scaling support for your database storage based on your application needs. For example, if there is too much of a load or data being stored, the storage can be automatically increased. Okay. So that if you want to enable, you can do that in real-time production environment. And then I'm trying to select under a default network where this database can be launched. So I'm trying to select as a public access. Then I'm trying to choose the network as the default network. And this database can be deployed under different availability zones like West US West 2A, 2B, 2C, 2D. You can see under this particular region, we can try to have it database deployed and available across different availability zones. That means different data center locations, right? So we have 4 different availability zones under Oregon region. So you can see it will try to have an option for here. Availability zone 2A, 2B, 2C, 2D. If you can try to select any of the availability zone, or you can try to click on no preference. It can try to be available and choose any one of the availability zone. And authentication, I want to enter username and password. So it is selecting the password authentication as this. And if you want to have this monitoring, for example, how your database being monitored, how much consumption, what are the events, the CPU, the processing, the memory, and everything that can be monitored. If you want, you can try to enable the monitoring option. Okay. So I've selected the required details. So let me try to create a database from my end. Okay. Now click on close. Now it is in creation. Okay, it takes some time. Let's try to have it created. So it's getting backing up. So it is trying to prepare a database in the background. So let me try to refresh. So you can see it has been successfully created a database demo-db. Okay. So what I'll try to do now, I'll try to create a server and connect this database to that particular server so that I can try to have the data organized. Okay. Now let me launch a server. I'm trying to have it as a demo server. I'm using Linux as an operating system so that I can try to connect to that database and connect this. So I'm trying to have this server as it's like a web server, for example. Okay. Inside this web server, I'm trying to connect the database which has been installed and configured inside the cloud environment. So I'll try to have this Linux security group. I'm trying to launch the server now. Let this launched quick. So, all right, my server has been successfully launched. It is in running state. Let me try to connect the server. Okay. And if I try to see this, click on connect. So I'm trying to execute and log into that server. So I'm trying to connect to this SQL server inside this Linux machine. All right. And actually, we cannot do in Windows because Windows will be a time-taking process. It might take 1 hour. Okay. So that doesn't try to work out in the lab session. So Linux is quicker. So we are trying to perform over here. For the Windows, we have to work on the project in a full-time batch. Okay. And I'm trying to install some commands so that we try to install SQL software inside this machine. All right. I'm trying to execute some commands here. Apt update. Oh, I think I have tried to launch. I need to launch Ubuntu. I've used a different OS. Let me try to select. So if I try to open this database, default security group, select this. So launch perfectly now. Okay. I'm trying to install required files. I'm installing MySQL software. MySQL. So it is trying to install all the backend software configuration required for SQL software. We'll try to start the service. So your service is actively running. So this has been successfully done. Now I want to connect to this database. For that, I have to copy this endpoint and I'll try to type the command as mysql -h space the database endpoint name space and capital P 3306 -u. Username I put as admin and the password I have to enter now. It is asking for the password. So now you see, welcome to the MySQL monitor SQL version. You have successfully connected. So that's what it's trying to show as MySQL here. So from here, I can trying to work on trying to work on the database. Okay. So for example, if I want to create a database, I'm using a sample SQL query language. For example, create database demo DB. I'm trying to create a demo DB. Okay. This is a SQL query language usually. You might have a computer subjects where you have an SQL concepts, right? In the same way, there are SQL query languages that will be useful over here. Okay. Yes. DB. Yes, MySQL demo DB. Unknown SQL host. There is some issue over here. I'm just checking if why it doesn't connect. The port should be correct. It is 06 is fine. Okay.
వాళ్ళంటి కొడుకు ఫోన్ చేశాడు వాళ్ళ అబ్బాయి చేసింది వెళ్ళాను. 11 o'clock. 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 11
Something weird. Mhm. Let me check the ports. Default security group. The port has to be enabled. I'll make sure. Has to be connected. So basically, it needs a proper network settings on the port information. Otherwise, it won't work. Okay, we need to remember that. అది వెళ్ళాడు వెళ్ళి కొడుకు చూపించడానికి వెళ్ళాడు వచ్చాక మరి ఏమన్నా మాట్లాడతారా మీరు ఇడ్లీ ఏమన్నా తేనండి ఇడ్లీ
తమ్ముడు అమ్ముతున్నాడు కదా అమ్ముడు ఇవ్వాలి కొనుక్కున్నాడు ఇవ్వాలి
తర్వాత టిఫిన్ తేనా So I'm just trying to, use it again. Maybe a connection disconnection. Show database. You see, demo DB has been created. Use demo DB. Now you can see my database has been changed. All right. So earlier there was a disconnect with the server. That's why it has some problem. All right. Now, say for example, if I want to create some table, okay, I can try to create in this way. I'm trying to execute create table and the person ID integer value. This one. I'm trying to create a sample employee table. Okay. Create table persons. Persons. Try this. I'm trying to give it as a person's ID, integer value, comma, last name, varchar, comma, first name, varchar, 255. So basically, I'm trying to execute some sample queries, okay? And address, varchar, 255. Maximum characters, I'm trying to give it city. All right. I'm trying to create a table name with the persons, and these are the values I'm trying to have it created. So we need to just make sure if I'm trying to supply the details perfectly. Okay. So what else? The details if I could miss integer value, the first name. Here you see 2550, it is not correct. I have to close this. Error in the syntax and check this line. Person's ID, integer value. I have to close with one more bracket. So query has been executed. So if I try to see the information, select star from persons table which I've created. Okay. You see, it is empty. That means this table doesn't have any data. So if I want to insert some data, then I can type insert into which table? Persons. And I can type this thing, persons ID, comma, last name, comma, first name, comma, address, comma. So basically I'm trying to insert the data inside this table. Okay. City. And then I'll close this bracket. If I want to insert the values, the integer value should be some value, comma, and the first name I'm giving as a John, and Vic, and address Canada, Norway. So I'm trying to give a city and the details and everything information over here. Okay. So I'm closing this bracket. I'm trying to enter. Let's try to see if this data has been updated or not. So basically I'm trying to perform SQL queries. Okay. Insert into persons. Student's ID, last name, first name, address. So it should be actually comma, and the number, this symbol also missed. So it has to be proper string because it has to be correct instruction. Schema restriction. So I'm trying to enter now. So one row has been affected. If I try to do select star from persons, you see a table has been created. The person ID and the last name and the first name and everything. You see this? Correct? In this way, I can try to do that. If you want to include one more table, so you can try to modify this data. I can try to modify this data. Okay. So see, I can see two lines. In this way, I can try to administrate the SQL database. All right. So that's it for today's session, guys. So tomorrow we'll catch up. Thanks, everyone. Then I hope you had a worthful of the session. Thanks. Bye bye.
So, students, like the day one session was cancelled, right? So we have postponed it to tomorrow. So tomorrow again you have a session at the same time at 8:45. So join on the same link, okay? So sir, tomorrow is also the session. So tomorrow is the last day. That will be a day fifth session. So
Yeah.
kindly join tomorrow,
Yeah.
students, okay? Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, students. Thank you all.